Hi, I'm Elizabeth Heichler, Editorial Director for MIT Sloan Management Review. A better way to unlock innovation and drive change in our fall issue tells the inside story of a large traditional life sciences company trying to become more agile and innovative. I sat down with Harvard Business School professor Linda Hill, who co-authored the article, to talk about the insights that emerged and how we can liberate people and teams to be their best. So, Linda, your work on collective genius looks at how leaders can, as you put it, create a community that is willing and able to generate new ideas. The CEO in this case wanted to do that, but found that communicating a vision and championing new initiatives wasn't enough. What are the leadership qualities and characteristics that are key to transforming into a more innovative company?
So, one of the things we find is very important is the leader's mindset. Leaders who build organizations that can innovate are often very visionary, but they understand that their job is not to say, I have a vision, follow me to the future. Rather, their job is to create the environment in which people will be willing and able to co-create that future with them. And co-creation is what innovation is all about, being able to collaborate, experiment, and learn together. So what do you as a leader need to do so that people will be willing to collaborate, experiment, and learn together? And that is where their focus is. And consequently, what you also see about them is, yes, they're very top-down about some things. As one leader said, brute force. But fundamentally, they understand that most innovation needs to be more bottom-up.
This leadership team decided early on to take a strengths-based approach to performance management. By doing that, they discovered that everybody has talents, and then they were off to the races using that information as insight to compose teams. So what are some of the implications of taking this more democratized approach to talent management for innovation?
So what we also see in organizations that can innovate time and again is that the leaders have a very democratic notion of who can innovate and who should innovate. They don't say, you people are the innovators and the rest of you are the executors. That is the kiss of death if you want to build an organization that can routinely innovate. Instead, they really focus on the fact that they need to make sure that everyone in the organization understands that they should do X and they could do X. And they want them to focus on what they could be doing, not just what they should be doing. And when you begin to think about what you could be doing, that's about stretching yourself and doing something new. So these leaders also adopt a very simple definition of innovation. And innovation is anything that is new and useful to the organization. So it could be anything. It's not just a product or service or a business model. It might be a way of figuring out how to cut costs, a way of organizing the work a little differently. So these leaders accept that some innovation and most innovation is more incremental, but also they need breakthrough innovations.
So a key part of the approach that was taken in this case was establishing the team as what you have called a basic building block for change. What do you mean by that? And can you tell me a little bit more about how leaders should think about innovation, both in terms of teams and individuals, or perhaps as teams instead of individuals?
So what we basically see is if you want people to be sort of willing and able to innovate together, they have to trust who they're working with. Since most, if not all, innovations are the result of collaboration, to sort of use the team as the building block makes sense because it's not about the individual. It's about, can you work in an inclusive way with other people who have very different points of view, very different expertise from you. Because we know that innovation usually requires diversity of thought, and when you have diversity of thought, you're going to have conflict. So you have to think about bringing together the people who have diversity of thought, but are also willing and able to sort of be in conflict constructively with each other. The advantage of the strength-based approach that they adopted was they led with, this is a diversity that we all, if I'm going to work with someone who's diverse, to know what their strengths are sort of opens me to thinking that maybe I should listen a little harder to understand what they can bring to what we're trying to get done. So it's a very, I think, intelligent way to get people to understand that we are all different, thank goodness. We actually need these various strengths that are on this team if we're going to get done what we want to get done. So to me, it's a very clever device to get people to be open to difference, because we know that people say they're open to difference, but they often aren't.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I thought one of the really interesting pieces of this case was that the teams that they composed were built by strength, but also across hierarchy. So they really put people together, and that leads into my next question, which is that these were very very hierarchical sorts of culture environments, both within the company and in the larger culture of the region. Introducing the expectations of autonomy for employees can be very uncomfortable in those circumstances when you're not used to that. So what can leaders do to help employees be more comfortable with both accepting and acting with more autonomy?
So how do you get them to be empowered? Well, they want to be in many ways. They have ideas. They want to embrace this opportunity to be empowered. But let's think about what the word empowerment means. It means to share the potential to exercise power with others or to have influence with others. So when you're giving people sort of this potential to have influence, one of the best ways to do it is to help them understand their own strengths, their own expertise, because expertise is the source of power we mostly want to be relying on when we're at work. So when you're using a strengths-based approach, you're actually helping people become more aware of what they do have to offer. And if they really buy into the sort of the bigger purpose of what you're trying to get done, then they're actually going to want to use what they have to offer to actually deliver on that. So what you need to do if you want people to feel comfortable being empowered is first get them excited about what you're trying to do, whatever that purpose is, then help them understand how they can contribute to that. So that's a big piece of the puzzle of getting people to sort of unlock or unleash what we call people's slices of genius, their talents and passions. Because now that I know this, and I know this is what we're trying to do, but too often we don't really share the bigger picture with people throughout the organization. And more importantly, we don't help them understand the connection between their daily work and fulfilling that purpose. And unless they sort of get that they do have some agency here, then why should I take the risk of getting the boss mad at me, which is what they assume might happen. The other thing is, really, you have to give people a sense of what the guardrails are. I mean, I do a lot of work in innovation in regulated businesses. And so helping people, again, it's about knowledge. This is why, not just this is what you can't do, but this is why you can't do it. And when you tell people why they can't do something, some of us are naturally rebellious, but most people will think, oh, that's not just bureaucracy. That's not just a rule. This is how it makes sure we do what we need to do for our customer or our consumer. So I think sometimes leaders don't spend enough time talking about the why or the sort of the bigger picture and helping people understand what they have, that they do have something to contribute to that purpose. So I have an example of this. There was one leader that we studied before, and this leader, every time he said the word innovation, he used the word technology in the same sentence. Now, he loves technology. It turned out when I went to interview the people who worked in the company, they all said, well, I'm not a technologist, so I'm not the innovator. So when he starts talking about that, I start planning my day to figure out what I'm supposed to do. And so when the leader saw that his rhetoric sort of leading people to think they're not innovators, he said, no. I was just using, examples that I'm excited about. And then I inadvertently made most of my organization, because they were mostly not technologists, think, oh, I'm off the hook here. Those other people are going to do it. And I guess I'll be involved in executing it. So what ended up happening when he saw we gave him the feedback, because we have this instrument that measures culture and capabilities, and he saw how his rhetoric was causing people to think it wasn't about them. As soon as he said, it's not about technology, all these people came up with ideas and wanted to put them. They had in a contest they were having about new and useful ideas. You can't imagine how many people came out of the woodwork saying, oh, I've always wanted to do this. Could we do that? And many of those ideas got implemented. I was even shocked the extent to which that operated that way.
Yeah, so there's clearly a pent-up desire to contribute.
Very much a pent-up desire to contribute, yes.
Linda, thank you so much for being with us here today. Really appreciate your insight, and of course, really appreciated your contributions to SMR with a fantastic article.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for working with us to be able to share our ideas.
Thank you for watching. To learn more on this topic, check out A Better Way to Unlock Innovation and Drive Change on the MIT SMR website. The link is in the description below. For more interviews with our authors, check out this YouTube playlist.